Imagine that your entire life lies in the hands of the most powerful emperor on earth, and you are learning to remain utterly composed in his presence. Not because you are fearless, but because your very survival depends on it. And the last person who appeared uneasy before the mighty emperor is now dead. The emperor squeezes your hand tightly, while soldiers drag a senator across the palace floor. Streaks of blood are visible amidst the marble tiles. Behind you, musicians play on ceaselessly, for no one in Rome is brave enough to stop the music when Caligula is in a good mood. And that is the most terrifying part. He is in a good mood. Tonight, he kissed you in front of the entire imperial court. Tomorrow, he might order your execution, simply because he disliked the way you blinked during dinner. Welcome to the life of Milonia Caesonia, and specifically to her life as the wife of Emperor Caligula, the woman whom Roman historians blamed for shaping Rome's most terrifying emperor, the woman they accused of poisoning the emperor, of manipulating him like a puppet, and of corrupting him, even accusing her of witchcraft and of driving him mad with her charms. And that is a rather interesting claim. For when history fails to offer an explanation for a dangerous individual, it almost invariably casts the blame upon a woman. But in this story, that very premise is flawed. By the time Caligula crossed paths with you, he had already become a monstrous figure. You did not create this monster. You chose to stay by his side. Was your acceptance of Caligula the right choice? Rome had witnessed many cruel emperors before, but no ruler was as terrifying as Caligula. Cruelty is often born of ambition, fear, and a thirst for vengeance. Caligula's violence often seemed excessively brutal and unbridled, more impulsive, more personal, more theatrical. Ancient historians wrote that he once complained, "Why did the people of Rome not possess a single shared neck so that he could sever them all at once?" Which feels less like imperial policy and more like a complaint from the world's angriest customer. To understand Caligula, one must understand the childhood that shaped him into such a man. Gaius Caesar, later nicknamed Caligula, meaning little boots, grew up in an atmosphere of fear and suspicion. His father, Germanicus, was immensely popular throughout Rome, and for that very reason, he became a target. In the realm of imperial politics, popularity is, in reality, a death warrant, one that could be served at any moment. Germanicus died under suspicious circumstances while Caligula was still a child. His mother, Agrippina, was sent into exile. His brothers were imprisoned and subsequently executed. Emperor Tiberius turned the imperial family into a stark lesson on the price one pays for standing too much in the spotlight. When Caligula became emperor at the age of 24, by then he had spent most of his life learning a single lesson. In this world, trust is what kills people. Initially, the people of Rome adored him. He abolished cruel policies, staged games and spectacles, paid the soldiers, and emerged as a generous and spirited emperor. After the cold and dreary reign of Tiberius, Caligula felt like sunlight breaking through the clouds. And then, within just a few months of his reign, Caligula fell mysteriously and gravely ill. No one recorded exactly what had happened, but ancient sources agree on what followed. The man who returned from that mysterious illness was not the same man who had fallen ill. Or perhaps something that had always been there had finally stopped hiding itself. This is where Milonia Caesonia enters the story. Not as a victim, not as a villain, as a woman who had already learned how to survive. Roman aristocratic society was a shark tank wearing expensive jewelry. Every dinner conversation was strategy. Every alliance carried a hidden cost. Every compliment came with an invisible blade underneath it. Women in the imperial court survived through intelligence, alliances, adaptability, and patience. Usually all four simultaneously. Caesonia appears to have been exceptional at all of them. She reportedly understood Caligula in a way no one else did, not morally, psychologically. She tolerated his instability without recoiling. She matched his intensity without performing. She embraced the chaos instead of being consumed by it. And to a man who had spent his entire life watching people pretend, that kind of presence must have felt like something close to safety. Imagine being the most feared man in the empire. Everyone around you is performing constantly, performing loyalty, performing admiration, performing calm. Then one person appears who simply doesn't. Someone who looks at all of it, the cruelty, the chaos, the darkness, and doesn't flinch. That kind of connection becomes addictive very quickly, especially to people who have never truly trusted anyone. Roman historians later insisted Caesonia must have used aphrodisiacs or love potions on the emperor, because apparently ancient writers found it more believable that a woman used magic than that a powerful man simply fell in love. Life inside the imperial palace had become something beyond ordinary madness. Caligula did not simply rule Rome, he performed rulership with infinite resources and absolutely no limits. He appeared dressed as gods. He humiliated senators for entertainment. He demanded divine worship while alive. He threatened executions casually during dinner, sometimes as jokes, sometimes not. The distinction was never entirely clear. Every person around him lived in permanent psychological calculation. Too much laughter? Suspicious. Too little laughter? Also suspicious. Imagine spending every moment calculating the correct emotional response to a man who might execute you because he had a nightmare about you. The Roman aristocracy despised Caesonia. They viewed her as socially beneath what an emperor should want, which appears to have made Caligula want her even more. The emperor who craved spectacle found his greatest provocation in this one choice, choosing her over all their noble daughters. You can practically hear the senators grinding their teeth across 2,000 years of history. Then Caesonia became pregnant, and suddenly the stakes changed completely. Caligula reportedly adored their daughter, Julia Drusilla, with a tenderness that surprised everyone. He acknowledged her publicly, named her proudly, held her before the court. He married Caesonia despite having no political need to. He kept her beside him in a world where closeness meant exposure. These were not the gestures of a man performing affection. These were the gestures of someone who had almost nothing left to trust, clinging to the one thing that felt real. Julia Drusilla was born into the most dangerous household in the ancient world, an infant who had done nothing, whose only crime would be existing as the daughter of an emperor someone wanted Dave. By now, Rome was fracturing under the weight of what it had become. Executions multiplied. The treasury was draining. Senatorial patience had run out. And here is the truth about living beside a tyrant. Every day that passes, more people around you are quietly calculating how to survive his removal. The palace had become a beautiful prison, filled with people performing normalcy while waiting for the walls to fall. Cassius Chaerea, one of the Praetorian officers Caligula had publicly humiliated repeatedly, had reached his limit, and humiliated powerful men, when they finally move, tend to move decisively. The end came in 41 CE. Caligula was attending a theatrical performance when the conspirators moved. The most powerful man in the world collapsed onto the stone floor, stabbed repeatedly by the guards sworn to protect him. Caesonia heard the commotion. She ran toward it, carrying their daughter. Imagine that moment. The noise, the smoke, the sound of men shouting somewhere ahead, and the realization moving through you like cold water. The emperor is dead, which means everyone connected to him is now a loose end. Ancient accounts record that Caesonia threw herself across Caligula's body. She was killed there. Their daughter, still an infant, was also killed. And just like that, an entire family erased in a single afternoon. Rome moved quickly to assign meaning to what had happened. Caligula became the cautionary tale of absolute power, and Caesonia became the explanation, the seductress, the manipulator, the woman who poisoned a good man's mind. Because history is not written by the people who suffer inside it. It is written afterward by people with agendas. and the simplest agenda is always the same. Find a woman to carry the blame so the man stays complicated. But beneath all the accusations, something more human is visible. A dangerous man who trusted almost no one, a woman who understood him in a way no one else apparently did, and a system so violent, so consumed by power, that neither of them ever had a real chance. That is the tragedy of Milonia Caesonia. Not that she married a monster, not that she was blamed for his crimes, but that somewhere inside one of history's most documented reigns of terror, there is evidence she may have genuinely loved him. In imperial Rome, love was not a sanctuary, it was an exposure. It made you visible, and visible people in that world rarely survived very long. She did not die nameless. She died known, and perhaps, in a world designed to erase women like her, that is the only kind of survival that was ever available. Caesonia lived 2,000 years ago, but her story did not end with Rome, because right now, today, someone is sitting across a dinner table from their own Caligula, calculating the right tone of voice, the right expression, the right amount of laughter, not because they are weak, but because somewhere underneath all the chaos, they genuinely love this person. And that is not a flaw. That is the most human thing in the world. But here is what Caesonia's story teaches us. Love is not the problem. Staying in a place that was never safe, that is where survival ends and disappearance begins. You are allowed to love someone completely and still choose yourself. Caesonia never got that choice. You do.
I hope you liked this video. Leave your thoughts in the comments section. And don't forget to hit the subscriber button and bell icon. Thank you.